of deity worship is remembrance of Krishna, but it helps in the process of bringing the mind to Krishna. If the mind is not going to be absorbed in Krishna, it's going to be absorbed in something. And so the whole sadhana bhakti process is to regulate those activities that then bring the mind to Krishna. And deity worship is a very important part of bringing the mind to Krishna in a regulated way, regulated by time, regulated by standards of cleanliness, regulated by considerations of paraphernalia, and just like this very nice altar. Is this something you designed or you made it? Like you went to a place to buy some wood and bought the wood and literally made it. Pretty creative. Have you done anything like this before? Just inspired. You saw something, you liked that something, you made one like that something, and here it is. You drew it from just from scratch? Gee. Okay. Well done. Well done. Well done. Well, see, that's a very nice example. Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam, using the senses for the service of the master of the senses, result in the principal sense, the mind, being also absorbed in Krishna. Engaging the senses is to help engage the chief sense, the mind, in remembrance of Krishna. And then in the regulations with deity worship, because people that are just beginning in Krishna Bhakti, they may be intimidated by rules and regulations and strictures and procedures. Of course, some people are attracted to those things, but commonly it's uncomfortable or it's awkward or something. But those regulations have a purpose. I'm repeating myself, but that purpose is to awaken our natural devotion for Krishna and to give activities for the senses so that the mind is absorbed in Krishna. There are stages of life, without going through all the different stages that one's life may go through. One thing in the course of the changing of what one's life goes through at different stages, if you have a deity, that's something that doesn't change. Like, those of you that have families, when you have children, eventually the children grow up and go to school and get married and they're out of the home. But the deity doesn't go to college and get married and have a family and leave the home. It's a lifelong position of service. And done nicely, then it helps to make the body and the mind clean, make one's thoughts go regularly, become absorbed in, and even attached to the deity form of the Lord. This is a natural experience for those who are regularly engaged in deity worship. Archana. It's for persons who have some proficiency and some commitment, some dedication, some purification from the hearing and chanting activities. trying to understand the message of the scripture, pondering over, hearing, contemplating from different angles of vision. Then the deity form is a merciful manifestation, um, similar to what I see a copy of Bhagavad Gita over there on the shelf. Bhagavad Gita is a merciful manifestation also because through Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is speaking, directly disclosing himself to Arjuna, and through disclosing himself to Arjuna, to everybody. So that's a merciful manifestation. Scripture, Krishna disclosing himself to others, it's very special. In our discussions in the morning, we're hearing about Akrura and the good fortune that Akrura feels to be in Krishna's presence, and the greatest of fortune, and that he heard about Krishna before he went to see Krishna, came from Narada. Narada, when visiting in Mathura, had discussions with Akrura and told him about Krishna. Narada has a way of going here and there and telling people about Krishna. That's how Rukmini came to know about Krishna, from Narada. She just heard about Krishna from Narada, and that was it. She gave her heart to Krishna. And there was no way that she was going to accept Shishupal or anyone else except Krishna. So just the hearing about Krishna, this is the Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam. As that hearing and chanting process matures, then going further with giving the senses an opportunity to see the form of the Lord, to touch the form of the Lord, to make offerings to the Lord, it gives more sense and mind activity centered on what the goal is. Something that Srila Prabhupada taught us with deity worship is it's incomplete. He said two things, at least. It's incomplete without prasadam distribution. So somehow or another, those of you that have deities, think of ways, at least from time to time, that the prasadam of the deity, or that which is offered to the deity, can be distributed to others. Now certainly that's true in a temple, but true in your home as well, as householders too. That's not like, anyway, however you do, consider some way to distribute the prasadam of your deity. And a second, that which is incomplete, deity worship is incomplete without kirtan or chanting. So like in your home, along with the worship of the deity, some chanting for the pleasure of the deity, or some recitation of verses that you like. Sit before the deity and recite the verses that you like for the pleasure of the deity. Or read Krishna's message from Bhagavad Gita aloud for the pleasure of the deity. Or read Srimad Bhagavatam aloud and Bhaktivedanta purports for the pleasure of the deity. So it's deity worship has that function, that things that we do with our senses can connect directly with seeking the pleasure of the deity form of the Lord. It's a very natural process. As we practice in this plane through deity worship, etc., the same consciousness continues after this body is finished, because the consciousness of doing even simple things, everyday things, for the pleasure of the form of the Lord continues into the spiritual realm. That absorption, that consciousness stays with you. The body won't stay with you, but consciousness will stay with you. And one more thing, I just share a little nice description. Um, the procedures of deity worship, particularly for worship in the home, is not as strict or elaborate. Of course, it can be as much as anyone desires, but minimum standards are not the same as temple standards. But whether it's the temple standards or the home standards or whatever the standards are that you engage in worship, the essential feature is these are activities that are meant to bring the mind to Krishna. There's a very nice description. Of course, it's narrated slightly differently at different times, found in Nectar Devotion or Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu of one elder Brahmin. The way that Prabhupada tells this story is when elder Brahmin was hearing some discussion from Srimad Bhagavatam. In the course of the discussion he was hearing, he heard that the deity form can be worshipped in different ways. In metal, wood, stone, paint, jewels, and even the mind. So the Brahmin was he listened very carefully, and he was attracted to deity worship, but he was quite poor. But when he understood that he could worship this deity in his mind, because he was poor, he sat in meditation and elaborately worshipped his deity just within his meditation. He gathered up sacred waters from holy places, performed abhishek of his deity, decorated his deity in very nice cloth and garments and ornaments and garlands, went to special places to get special flowers in his meditation, made fantastic garlands, crowns, jewelry, and then he went to prepare cooked food for the deity. And he would do this on a daily basis, gather ingredients from here and there, make the ingredients very clean, take the time to clean the vessels and prepare very nice foodstuffs to offer to the deity. And this was his daily practice. And he carried on like this for some time. And after some time, one day when he was testing to see if the sweet rice had cooled down enough, because you didn't have a refrigerator, if it had cooled down enough to offer to the deity, he stuck his finger just to test the temperature. It was still hot, and he burned his finger in his meditation. So when his meditation broke because his finger burned, his finger was burned. And he was astonished because it was all in his meditation. And the way Prabhupada narrates the story is Lord Narayana in the spiritual world smiled. And Goddess of Fortune, Lakshmi, asked him, what is it that's causing you to smile like this? He said, one of my devotees has been worshipping me in his mind, worshipping my deity form in his mind, and he just burned his finger testing the sweet rice. So I'm going to bring him here to the spiritual world. And he sent his Vaikuntha Vimana to the spiritual world and immediately brought the Brahmana in his self-same body to the spiritual world. He didn't wait for him to die. He just took him to the spiritual world because he was so pleased by his devotion. By his devotion. So I'm narrating this because an essential part of any activity we do, whatever our duties in life are, but a good place to start is the core devotional practices, bringing the mind genuinely and devotionally to the personality of Godhead, not just the procedures or the rituals or the externals, but the mood of loving service with which we do, which is what the Brahmana was doing, and the reciprocation of the personality of Godhead is there. We may, this worship of the Brahmana went on for some time, and he didn't go back to Godhead immediately, but the Supreme Lord was accepting his worship because it was offered with genuine love. And that should be our consciousness. The Lord may do whatever he may do. He may show himself to us. He may do whatever he wants to do. But we should know that he's recognizing the love and devotion with which we're offering what we're offering. However weak we may be in our love and devotion, just even the practice of love and devotion is accepted. Even the smallest amount or quantity of love and devotion, it's all we have, so we offer what we have. This is our teaching of Rupa Goswami. So the deity worship process is given to us since very ancient times. And the standards of deity worship for those that are doing or wish to know how to worship a deity in your home, the Deity Worship Ministry has a nice little website. You can look it up. Deity Worship Ministry, ISKCON. And, you go right to the website and they'll give you very specific procedures that for home worship of different, for Gauratai and for Jagannath and so forth, these are standards that you should observe on a daily basis. So if you're curious to know, there it is. And of course, our pujaris here at the temple, they can assist you in whatever way so that you can get a course correction if you're not really sure about some detail. More important than the procedures and the details is the love and devotion with which you're making your offerings, as along with cleanliness, most important, and regulation. With deity worship, regulation is very important. It's not, it's less accentuated in home as opposed to deity at the temple. In other words, deity at the temple at Mangalarti is not 4:31 but 4:30. So at home, the timing may be a little later and may be a little more flexible because there aren't multiple pujaris. It's you, your family. So still, regulation within a certain time interval is very good for your consciousness and for the purpose of being in the mindset of serving the deity nicely. There's always some things that come in our day-to-day life. So therefore household standards are a little more flexible. And again, you'll find what that is by going online. Deity Worship Ministry website. Cleanliness, regulation, and the devotion with which you're performing these activities. The details are important, but that's not the essence. The details are not the essence. The essence is the essence, and the love and devotion with which you're offering things is the essence. And we follow the procedures that are recommended for us. And fix the mind on Krishna progressively as time passes, with the assistance of the regulation that goes with deity worship. So let's see if there's some comments. There's a number of persons assembled back there. If anybody would like to discuss some points or share. Is the deity ready to come out and we can make the offering? Yes? You made the offering already. Over there, you made the offering. Okay. Okay, so then the offering's made. Then when we're finished with any discussion, we'll just have the arti and the installation is complete. Somebody back there? Somebody back there?
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. There is a little question which is going on, and we are listening a few classes on Bhagavatam. Means I asked this question a couple of times. Maybe I'm not clear on that part. Like the women, why their position was so low. Means maybe low. That is what I'm understanding.
In Vedic culture, the position of men and the position of women are not equal, and you want to know why?
Yeah.
That's your question?
Yeah, from the scriptures, means in the scriptures, why it is like means I got many times the answer, but still
You're not satisfied.
Because scripture is anyway it is a fact, so we are
Because
following.
what?
Scriptures are the facts, so I'm following, but the thing is that the question keep on coming, and I didn't have that.
Well, if you've heard answers, you're asking again.
Yeah.
Is it because, what's the reason you're asking again if you've heard answers? Is it because you're uncomfortable in principle? Or you haven't heard something that's compelling and reasonable?
Yeah, maybe it's like not reasonable. There is maybe some specific reason. I still didn't heard till now. I'm thinking like that. There is specific reason is there.
There's we're not living during Vedic times. This is Kali Yuga, and Vedic times are far, far away from our present circumstance. However, in Vedic culture, let's say in our modern circumstance, Srila Prabhupada has, on the authority of Scripture, has elevated the position of anyone in this human form of life, meaning it's not for monkeys and dogs and cows, but for in the human form of life, there are roles for women in marriage and men in marriage and so forth. But spiritually speaking, from our Vaishnava teachings, women may receive Gayatri initiation, women may worship the deity, form of the Lord. There is spiritual access that's equal, but the roles, even when the spiritual access is equal, the roles are different. Now, the reference that you're asking about is from Vedic times, when the role of Striya Vaishishtata Shudras, Tepi Yanti Param Gatim. You're familiar with the Bhagavad Gita verse, I'm sure. Yes? Striyo means woman. Vaishya Tata Shudras, Tepi Yanti Param Gatim. Krishna says, Param Gatim, the supreme destination is available for women, Vaishyas and Shudras, equally, anyone else, regardless of their position. But why is he singling out Shudras and Vaishyas and then in the same line in women? That's your question. Why in Vedic culture, so I started where I started because Vaishnava culture doesn't hold the same restriction for functions of women. It does hold the function of the role, social role of women. The Varnashram system places the male in the position of the Purusha and the female in the position of Prakriti to be to be in the position of assisting Purusha. The wife assists the husband, or the daughter is under the protection of father, under the protection of the husband, under the protection of elder children as she has grown and matured. And so protection is different than unprotected or the protector. Women are not the protectors of their husbands. Men are the protectors of their wives because of their value. You protect something that's valued in society. The culture is women bear the children, and the children are the future generation, the future of the society. And so the care that women give to the children determines the well-being of the future generations. And therefore, women are to be protected, not just pushed down, but valued and protected. That is not our modern times. It's not our modern times, unfortunately, without elaborating. But the Vedic, we're speaking now Vedic culture. The role of a woman is to serve her husband, to serve her father, to serve her husband, and to be cared for by her elder children. But that's the function. It's the happiness. It's the virtue. It's the glory. It's the opulence of a woman, is to be in that position of being the servant of her father, her husband, and caring for her children. Just like say for a Brahmana, the wealth of a Brahmana is austerity. Now somebody might say, well, wait a minute, the Brahmana should be honored. But the Brahmana isn't interested in being honored. The Brahmana is interested in Brahman. And part of the qualification to become knowledgeable in Brahman is the austerities, restricting the mind and senses from worldly things, which look like austerity, or it's called austerity, tapa. But that's their wealth. That's their wealth. And the wealth of the woman is her chastity and her shyness and her faithfulness and service. It's Vedic culture. Vedic culture flourishes for the woman and for the children in the family of such a woman. No, Vedic times are long gone. But why was it there? It was a social principle for the flourishing of society. Let's say it, gently. The further you go from Vedic society, Vedic principle, Vedic culture, the more you get turmoil. The more you get problems that are very difficult to manage. In fact, are unmanageable, and exponentially so. That which is valuable is to be protected. And that which is valuable to be protected is in the inner chamber of the house. Where do you place your heirlooms in the family? Do you place them out at your front gate, or by the front door, or in the backyard? You place them in some safe place in the center of the house because of their value. So the role of women in Vedic culture determines the well-being of future generations, present and future generations. They're to be protected, not just because they're physically weaker. It's just because although they may be physically weaker, they're to be protected. And therefore their role is to be protected, not, to be in that subordinate position, to be protected. Now, saying all of that, let's go to exalted women in Vedic culture, like Queen Kunti. He's a good example. How exalted is Queen Kunti? She's way up there. As far as she's concerned, Mother Jasoda is out of sight, but she's way up there. And she considers herself not qualified. You read her prayers, chapter 8, canto 1, and she speaks of herself in these very humbling tones or messages. We as women are not capable of understanding you. She understands Krishna. She understands Krishna better than the Gyanis and Yogis and Tapasvis because of her bhakti. But her social position and her regard of how she carries herself, she's a privileged woman. She came right before Krishna's chariot, right in front of the public assembly as his chariot was about to leave, and the chariot stopped so he could hear her prayers. He treated her like mother. She was his aunt. He would come before her and touch her feet. And she didn't like it because she saw the personality of God. Why are you touching my feet? But he respected her, although she's to be protected. It's a social dynamic. You step apart from the social dynamic, the social fabric, and spiritually, she's so elevated. Socially, she's taking the position of being protected or subordinate. Even in her subordination, I mean, I like this. You look at the painting of Queen Kunti offering her prayers. There's a big, huge assembly in the public square as this chariot's about to leave. And she's the privileged lady. She's the mother of the emperor of the world. And so she has privileges, and she exercised those privileges. She came right before Krishna, essentially pleading with him, please don't go. She didn't say it directly, she said it indirectly. Was she qualified? Absolutely. Was she considering herself in this humble position? Absolutely. It's the proper position in Vedic culture for a spirit soul in a female body. She's to be protected. And so she takes a certain social role. Spiritually, it's altogether a different story. She's Queen Kunti. She's looked up to by everybody. Let's take another example, maybe you're less familiar with, and that's the wife, Lord Nityananda. You know, Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda. Lord Nityananda had two wives. After Lord Chaitanya left, Lord Nityananda left. When Lord Nityananda left, there were two wives, Janava and Vasudha. They were sisters. Vasudha gave up her life, and Janava, the consort of Lord Nityananda, was looked up to by all the Vaishnavas, the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan, and everybody. They held her in the highest esteem. The highest esteem. Because she was beyond any bodily conception. She acted as mother. She cooked. She cooked. She did things that one expects ladies. She knew how to do all those things, and she loved doing those things. At the same time, she was held in the highest regard. Or in Krishna's pastimes, Yogamaya personified was a lady, Purnamasi. Sandipani Muni was Krishna's teacher, right? When he went to Mathura, then he was sent off to go to school. He went to Sandipani Muni school, correct? You with me? You're not familiar with that? Not really. You've heard his name. In Ujjain, Today's Ujjain. That's the place where Sandipani Muni's school was. So Sandipani Muni's mother was Purnamasi. Purnamasi is Yogamaya for Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. So before Krishna was born, Yogamaya or Purnamasi came, and immediately to her presence in Vrindavan, they're following Vedic culture, but immediately they respected her as a Brahmani. They didn't know the Sandipani Muni whole story. Just her spiritual presence was such that she was respected. They wouldn't do anything without consulting her. She was like the guru of the whole community, although she was in a female body, because of her spiritual quality. She didn't step outside of her social position, but her spiritual position was most exalted. It's a social structure. It's not an eligibility question. It's a social structure for the smooth operation of society. And I'll say it again. The further one goes from that Vedic paradigm of social structure, the more turbulence comes naturally. The further and further, more turbulence comes naturally. Now, this is Kali Yuga, and people don't give a hoot about Vedic culture. This is modern times. And there's a lot of problems without listing them in social dynamics, without going through the whole thing. So there's a purpose. It's a spiritual elevation purpose for social function. That's why. And Krishna created it. And why did Krishna create it? It's not like, to exploit women or being demeaning towards women or something like that. It's to create a social structure for the gradual spiritual upliftment of society, for persons who don't identify with themselves as the soul, but they identify with themselves as the body. And in that forgetfulness of who they are, they forget Krishna. And so what's the social structure for gradual elevation of society? The Varnashram system is that social structure. And there's a place for women in that social structure, and they're to be protected. That's their place. And it's a very important function. Say it negatively. If it's not in place, society goes haywire to the degree that it's not in place. It doesn't, in our modern situation, it doesn't need to be, this isn't Vedic times. But the principle needs to be recognized. Krishna created the principle. And how do we live our lives according to that principle that he created? The essence of Bhagavad Gita's message or spiritual life's message is not social structure. That's not the essence. Lord Chaitanya spoke like that when in his talks with Ramananda Roy by the banks of the river Kaveri in South India. What's the goal of life? One of the means to achieve it, Ramananda Roy suggested, Varnashram. Lord Chaitanya said that's external. So we're speaking about a social structure and then saying it's external. That is to say, it's not the essence. It doesn't mean we trash it. It's not the essence. So a spirit soul's embodiment in a female form or a male form and observing regulations connected with the social structure that Krishna gave, that's not the essence. We don't trash it. It helps. But the essence is bhakti, and it helps nourish bhakti by having a proper social structure, or that which is Krishna given social structure. It helps. It's a good frame or incubation chamber for cultivation of bhakti. That's why it's there. Just yesterday, just to embellish this as an example, just yesterday evening, the topic for discussion was our victory versus others' victory. And the person that was in the spotlight was Sita. Because when Hanuman, with many things, but one of the key points was when Hanuman volunteered, let me take you out of here. And she looked at Hanuman and you're so small. So he made his body big. I crossed the ocean. I can carry you back. I can take you right to Ram, right now. Just give me the word. And she gave her practical reasons why that wouldn't be a good idea. And then she gave her spiritual reason. And that is, the glory of Ram will not be known to the world if you take me back and he hasn't come. He gave his word that he won't be able to keep his word if you take me back. And there's other reasons. You're flying through the air, I'll fall off into the ocean. And when you're taking off and the Rakshasas are fighting you, how are you going to protect me while you're fighting them? Carry me away. So Hanuman shrugged his shoulders and said, you're right. But so going back to how she was in that predicament, the commentators, Sri Vaishnava commentators on Ramayana say, Sita was taking the function, although she's the eternal, internal potency of Ramchandra, like Lakshmi is to Narayan, she took the position in pastime to be like a jiva that wants to enjoy independently from Ram. Oh, I want the deer, and etc., etc. Ram didn't want the deer. She wanted something completely without consideration of what Ram wants. That's living entities. So she was unprotected by taking that position. Protection means, so there was a big problem that came as a result. And she spoke the way to Lakshman, the way she spoke to Lakshman. So, and that caused another problem. I'm just illustrating. We need protection. And that the social structure for women is that protection because of the value is seen for women in society. That was one of Arjun's principal contentions in chapter 1 Bhagavad Gita. Without being protected, there'll always be men that will exploit women, and then it'll be ruination of society. So women are to be protected. That's a Vedic principle. So then there's a social function in relation to that, being protected and being that valuable resource that moves society upwards instead of some other direction. It's Krishna's arrangement. Prakriti is to be led by Purusha. Yad yadacharati sheshas tatadeve tarorjana. That's Krishna's arrangement. I didn't make it. He did. But it's good. for spiritual elevation purposes. The risk, there's many risks. One of them is exploitation. That's going on. And then it makes another chaos. Protection doesn't mean exploitation. Protection means protection. I had this discussion. I'm getting carried away a little bit. I had this discussion with my parents, not about women's role, but about protection. So when I was brought up in America, nice, religious family, but they weren't vegetarian. So when I became vegetarian, came back from college, and I'm a vegetarian, Hare Krishna guy, my mother wanted to know, why did you make that change? And I said, we should not exploit animals, we should protect them. And her response was, but in the Bible it says, this is Genesis in the Bible, it says man was given dominion over animals. And I replied, when I was little, you had dominion over me. And she burst out in tears and ran from the room because she understood what I was saying. Dominion doesn't mean exploitation. Dominion means protection. There's Purusha and there's Prakriti. And that which is Prakriti is to be protected as most valuable. That's Krishna's arrangement. Men don't bear children. Women do. That's Krishna's arrangement. And those who bear children are to be protected. There's a social function in society that's natural by God's arrangement. And they're to be protected. Not, inferior, but they're to be protected and to follow the Purusha. That's natural arrangement. The strong are not to exploit the weak, but to protect the weak. I don't know if that's the answer you heard before, but that's, a little slice of the pie of the function of in Vedic culture for women's role. I didn't grow up with that idea, but it makes sense to me. And it's Krishna's arrangement, so I'm fine with it. Anything else in our audience here? You have something? Yeah?
In my mind from last 3 years, just to ask you, share some pastime of Prabhupada with you.
You want to hear a Prabhupada pastime?
Yeah.
These two questions have nothing to do with deity worship, but
Yeah. So it was with me that how you meet Prabhupada, like just
how I met Prabhupada?
Yeah.
Okay. Once upon a time, I was a young man. And I was attending a university. And one evening, while attending the university, I was walking through the student union. And from one side of the student union to the other side of the student union, because on the other side was where a friend lived in one of the dorms. I was going to see my friend. And as I was passing through the student union, I saw a big crowd of people around a conference hall on the ground floor. And I'd never seen anything quite like that because the door was half open. There was a big crowd of people around the door. So I kind of wiggled my way through the door to the crowd to see what was going on inside. and there was a stage. The lights they're just spotlights on the stage. It was two people, Allen Ginsberg and Prabhupada. And I didn't know who Prabhupada was. I didn't know anything about anything. But I knew Allen Ginsberg because he was a kind of famous guy. Those of you that are, a little bit older, you don't know who Allen Ginsberg is. But he was an American poet, kind of famous and infamous at the same time. Infamous in the sense that he was a big proponent of LSD, and he had a style of writing poetry that was LSD-like, just stream of consciousness-like, and every fourth word was a swear word, and and then he would read his poetry, and people would come to hear his poetry, having taken their favorite intoxication, flying in the sky and stuff like that. So, and he had some attraction for India, and yoga and mantra meditation. So he was on the stage. I recognized him from photographs. That's Allen Ginsberg. He was a celebrity. And then next to him, I didn't know who that was. It was Prabhupada playing kartals and Allen Ginsberg playing bongo drums, seated on a stage, and the audience out here, high on whatever they were high on. Everyone was like flying in the sky somewhere. And they just chanted because they were so intoxicated. They couldn't hear anything. And the chanting went on for quite some time. And then Prabhupada spoke for about 10 minutes, really simple ABC Bhagavad Gita message, and said, we have a center across the street on Englewood Avenue, and you can come visit. We have daily classes, and this is their prasadam. That was it. That sound vibration, I didn't understand at the time, but in retrospect, it changed the course of my life. That sound vibration of Prabhupada's chanting Hare Krishna mantra. Because after that, doors that didn't even exist appeared, and then they opened, and things happened, and people, and and it was an interesting journey, meeting people and so forth and so on that I never met before, and these spiritually minded people, and devotees, and all kinds of things. I had 3 professors give me their Bhagavad Gita. That was interesting. So it's just one thing. So that was my first experience. And my next experience was about a year and a half or so later. Prabhupada was visiting in New York, and I was initiated. That was my second time of being in Prabhupada's presence. But in between, there was lots of, hearing his recorded lectures and serving his devotees and hearing about him, and becoming purified, and redirected in a life that was previously a life of good intention but foolish, misguided young American fellow. Anything else back there? Okay. Yes, one thing, and then we're going to have arti for the deity. The deity. Can you get the deity ready if need be?
I'm very impressed by how just one sound vibration of Srila Prabhupada has changed your heart and redirected your life. And
Powerful.
yeah, and so the other day we were also hearing Akrura praying or meditating on Krishna will touch me, embrace me, my body becomes purified, and those who see my body will get benefit, something like that he was praying in his prayers. So I was thinking that Srila Prabhupada is physically not present before us, but those who came in contact with Srila Prabhupada, like Your Holiness and many others whose lives have changed, and some of them are continuing, some of them are not. But my question is, Srila Prabhupada's videos are there, his pictures are there, his Vani is there, and the same potency is present, is available for us who are not so fortunate to see Srila Prabhupada, but we are fortunate to see his direct disciples. And
I recently read something where Prabhupada said that he was in the physical presence of Bhaktisiddhanta 4 or 5 times, period. But his life was dedicated to him. And many others had lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of association and not have, didn't have the same effect. So the receiver has to be on, not just, access, physical or vibrational. Receiver has to be on. Okay, let's have Arti. Someone can bring the deity and we'll begin.
Nupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Eti Namine Swami Eti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschadya Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Laddu Gopal, Jaya Laddu Gopal, Jaya Laddu Gopal, Jaya Laddu Gopal. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada.
Hiranyakashi Purvakshaha Shilatankanakalae Ito Narsimha Parato Narsimha Yato Yato Yamitato Narsimha Hare Narsimha Hridaya Narsimha Narasimhavatim Sharanam Prapadye Avakara Kamalavare Nakamatuta Shinga Lalita Hiranyakashipu Tanu Bringa Keshavadita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadish Hare Jai Jagadish Hare Jai Jagadish Hare Narsimhadev, 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 Jaya